The Forgotten Minotaur King. Side Story. The Attack on Mindas Castle. Part 3. Myrink ran down the halls of the castle with her sister Soiree and the mayor's calf of a son, Court, held snugly in a makeshift baby Bjorn worn by his au pair, Perna Reconquista. The mouseling hitwoman prayed the window of time she allowed her sister and Perna to prepare for their exit hadn't cost them precious minutes she could have used to secure their exit. Now regretting the detachment of half-orc troops she managed to dupe into sabotaging the secondary rescue attempt in the dungeon. Given she wasn't meant to save her sister, just the baby and Perna. There was also the fact that a captain from the secondary party was meant to give Myrink's rescue op a distraction near the gates. She was certain she wouldn't have needed, as the 4 dead orcs that littered the guest room halls would attest to. Now she was genuinely hoping Lieutenant Valoigne and his subordinates were as good as they claimed. Swinging into the corner of the hall, the other 2 women and the baby close behind, Myrink reloaded her twin revolvers and dashed towards the tower staircase into the main castle entrance, only to see a familiar and unwelcome face arcing the entryway.
Oi, what's all this then? Are you that Odegra what works for Fugazzi? What are you doing out here with prisoners? And I heard gunfire coming from this direction.
The massively tusked, greenish khaki-colored visage of the half-orc brute she'd seen many times during her travels with Kaisel and company stepped from the stairway peak. If Myrink recalled correctly, the skinny orc kid whose hand she shot off and months later she tossed into a pit of skeletons had mentioned this guy's name was Hansk. He also said something about being his cousin, but according to Ahani and Kaisel, just about all the half-orcs out of Wolfkeep were related.
I'm moving them to the outside of the castle. Some of the attackers from the dungeon made it up here. They killed a couple of guards even, but I managed to scare them off.
A puzzled look crossed Hansk's face, as an additional pair of enormous, bulbous-gutted ogres joined his side against the stairway. This must be his backup patrolman. Myrink wasn't expecting this, and the whimpering duet of the elf babysitter, along with Soiree, didn't offer much to soothe her nerves.
Hang on, you sound real familiar. Like that rat girl I met at the bar a few months ago. She carried guns just like those. She even shot off me mate Chomsky's.
Without another word, Myrink drew down and fanned 6 shots in the orc's direction. Artois Valoigne slid into a novice's dueling posture, the handle of his Fouchard polearm tilted above his head, his eyes never leaving his opponent, the demoniac avian centaur abomination Fugazzi. The battle in the now collapsing dungeon waged on around them. The half-orcs meant to guard the prisoner were still deadlocked by the combined forces of Valoigne's 2 captains, along with the unflinching skeletal forces Artois himself commanded. The sun above glared through the exposed ceiling, caused by the quick-handed displacement of an unfortunate grenadier, courtesy of the satyr assassin himself. Valoigne's burning brass armor gleamed as the 2 began to quietly circle one another, less than a dozen feet between them. Captain Alicio, along with the aid of his men, had finally managed to fell the single ogre among the enemy forces, as he began to make quick work of the remaining half-orcs. Fugazzi simply spread his arms in a pleading gesture before Artois.
Hey, I don't want any trouble, okay? Just put your little staff down on the ground. Surrender, alright? That girl of yours with Oxor ain't gonna get far, okay? I'm gonna kill you, okay? I'm gonna kill your man with that mustache over there, that guy who killed my doorman, and then I'm gonna kill her, okay?
Smirking and freeing one hand from his spear to smooth down his flowing hair, Valoigne decided he'd heard enough talk. Judgment's fang ached to silence this cowardly assassin for the good of the world. Diving blade first for the monster's hooven feet, Fugazzi seemed to blink from his sideline, feeling a clammy hand suddenly on the armor around his neck, and another gripping his forward spear hand. Valoigne tensed. How had the creature closed the distance so fast? The hand on his spear began to wrench, just as the one on his neck pulled his body backwards. Instead of allowing himself to be disarmed and yanked to the ground, Artois widened his stance, and with his free hand smashed his spiky elbow plate into the groin of the beast. Feeling the connection and hearing a squawk, taking advantage of the slightly loosened grip, Valoigne hoisted the entirety of Judgment's Fang's handle into the slightly pot-bellied gut of Fugazzi. The whole exchange took less than the blink of an eye to unfold. Artois leaped from the embrace of Fugazzi, turning his face to the wet boy himself. He postured with a spin of his spear.
As I said, all assassins are cowardly warriors. I've dealt with your kind before.
Squaring up again into what looked like a novice's dueling pose, the knight hoped that Captain Galane had made it out of the tower and back over the library wall with Oxor safe. Fugazzi looked flustered, but still composed. Thinking a proper fight may be in order, he ducked into an ukemikata and awaited the knight. Valoigne, however, was looking past his opponent with another growing smirk on his face. Lord Natanus Carnager, half-elven, glided down the tower steps into the foundry beneath the dungeon. He passingly noticed that the raucous sounds of explosions and combat died down the lower he climbed. That would explain the relaxed nature he found the various dwarves seemed to display while carrying out their daily duties. As he milled through the blacksmithy, an exceptionally harried dwarf scurried up to him, welding mask askew and clipboard in hand, his granite-textured face twisted with stress, and his work overalls drenched in flop sweat.
Mr. Carnage, the name's Worldworks, the foreman of the Mindas blacksmithy. How can I help you? If this is about the execution tomorrow, or the assault on the Palamedes University,
Waving his long-fingered hand in a dismissive gesture, the dwarf silenced himself and stared at Carnager.
No, I'm not here for any of that. But I would like to warn you, there's currently an assault on the dungeon above your foundry.
Foreman Dorks clutched his chest, seeming on the verge of a heart attack. Carnager put a calming hand on the dwarf's shoulder, as many passing workers overheard him as well and stopped their busying entirely.
Just simply wanted to warn you, is all. I'm actually here for an employee of yours, a lady by the name of Raoul.
In his many years on the planet, Natanus had never seen a stony surface like the foreman's face grow so pale so quickly.
She's right over here, sweeping metal shavings. You're not gonna drain her blood, are you? She's a good lass for a half-human.
Letting out a dry cackle of a laugh, Carnager swept past the foreman and up to the girl. She blanched just like he had at the sight of Lord Natanus' silent arrival. The foreman looked on as the two exchanged words. He was certain this would be the last time he saw the girl. But suddenly, he saw a broad smile cross her face as she violently tossed her broom to the smithy floor and followed the vampire lord out of the tower exit. Still not sure what the situation was, Whirl ordered everyone back to work and asked a couple of the more brawny workers, whose skin gleamed like roughly mined corundium, to guard the tower entrance. Didn't they know that they were under attack? He hoped that the bastard Rakshasas paid him extra for dealing with this nonsense. Galane made her way through the dungeon brawl. Oxor's portly, semi-conscious frame slung across her back, taking extra measure to issue orders to her grenadier underlings as she passed. The death of the soldier that had detonated the walls of the dungeon had given her an idea. As she cleared her way through the tower, her men and women were to destroy the dungeon keep. Flash bombs, grenades, and blasting powder at their own profligation, distracting any additional backup from the Rajal Assad forces, and general revenge for taking the diplomat in the first place. She hoped the troops and her co-captain Alicio, along with their superior Valoigne, would be safe. Checking Oxor hadn't completely fainted as she entered the tower cross-section proper, he offered her a pleading look.
Oh, thank you for rescuing me, Chevalier, but my wife...
Galane assured him she was a priority as well, and she was being rescued at this very moment. Sighing with relief, Oxor flopped back down onto Galane's back. With a lifter's exhalation, she sprinted on through to the library courtyard. She was immediately greeted with the hissing stares of a dozen shadow-wreathed humanoid figures. They had seemingly been milling around in freshly upturned graves until her arrival. They climbed from the ground and started to clumsily jaunt towards her, violently elongated cuspids and bicuspid teeth gnashing hungrily. Much to her dismay, this was the moment Oxor chose to awaken again and began screaming his mousy little heart out. Completely unarmed after being fooled by Fugazzi, she was nearly defenseless as the first one closed the distance and grabbed her arm. Its strength was vastly superior to a normal elf, as it appeared to have formerly been. She attempted to punch it in the head with a gauntleted fist, but its skull seemed to be made of steel. With a final greedy hiss, the thrall buried its fangs into her forearm, piercing the mail like a dagger through cloth. Within seconds, as she uselessly pounded on its head with her free hand, she felt the limb grow heavy and numb. Oxor took this opportunity to leap from Galane's shoulders, making a dash for the walls of the courtyard. The remaining thralls seemed to have enough intelligence remaining to recognize the actual threat and continued to make their way towards Galane. As a second thrall, this one a gnome in a tattered wedding dress, ripped into Galane's calf. She attempted to kick off the monster, but once again, its surprising strength made the leg impossible to move as it began to lose feeling. Another bit into her shoulder, and Galane finally allowed herself to howl in pain. She looked outward to see Oxor uselessly flailing against the walls, unable to scale them with the grappling hook only she possessed. Galane attempted to reach for it. If she was to die, at least she could save the target. But as her one remaining limb scrambled for the rope. She felt the flash bombs fastened to her belt. Hoping the rumors and legends were true, she shut her eyes and unbuckled the bomb. Tossing it into the ground, the burst of light didn't seem to deter the bloodsuckers, but it did dispel the shadow matter that wreathed the three, draining her. And the moment that the blazing sun above met their skin, they released her, hissing to the sky like overly performative actors in a play. They began to glow like burning logs in a fireplace. Seconds later, they exploded into a cloud of red-tinted ash. Lying on her back in the courtyard, Galane yelled for Oxor to come to her. The remaining 3 thralls began to pick up their pace, and the mouseling slipped by them unnoticed. As he knelt by her, she fumblingly gave him her 2 remaining flash bombs and pointed her hand towards the encroaching bloodsuckers. Repeating her strategy as best he could, he tossed one at the center of the group. The same result occurred. Burning logs and then red ash. Oxor hugged Galane, and she offered him an appreciative laugh. He began to try to get the knight back on her feet. Just as she managed a sitting position, she felt Oxor's body jerk from above her. The tubby little mouseling squealed in horror as he went flying all the way back towards the entrance of the dungeon, stopping suddenly and feeling a cold hand holding him several feet above the ground by his large mouseling ears.
No, I don't think you'll be leaving anytime soon. But I do have some need for a few new thrall servants. You and your men shall do nicely, fair lady knight.
Hi, my name is Matthew Lewis, and I do the voice of Kaisel Bakshi along with all the additional voices in The Forgotten Minotaur King. I hope you enjoy the podcast and continue to listen into the future. If you want to support my content, please donate to my Patreon, Matthew Lewis Podcasts. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Matthew Lewis Podcasts, all one word. Follow me on Twitter at Matthew Lewis P. Or leave a positive maximum star review on your podcast app of choice. If you found this podcast, I assume you're familiar enough with the genre to know how important reviews are to the survival of a channel. And I hope you recommend this to your friends. Or if you didn't like it, you could recommend it to your enemies, and I'll teach them a lesson. Keep it sleazy, folks, and thank you.